Once again, a very warm welcome to all those in attendance today. So it's 7 o'clock on the dot. Let's get started without any further ado. My name is Yashwant Pulamati. I am the host for today, and I will be joined by my associate director, Mr. Amit Tyagi, and also a representative from GMAT to answer queries about the GMAT online exam. Once again, this is an application workshop webinar. So let's get started. So we have a QR code on this slide here. For those of you who haven't already logged on to our portal, I strongly recommend that you scan this code and browse through the login portal. If you haven't done so, you can scan and minimize that page or just have it saved on your phone for future reference. But this session would be more, it would give you more insights if you already had started your application process already. But even if you haven't, it will give you some good insights into the things, the best practices you have to keep in mind while you do that. So I'm just going to let this slide here for a couple of seconds. So those of you who haven't already logged in can scan the code and log into the portal. All right, moving on. Like I said, this is a PGP application workshop. I believe most of you have already attended our orientation webinars and have some background information about ISB. But for those of you who don't have, to kind of describe ISB in a nutshell would be to call it a truly global business school. And on the bottom, you see some of the logos. Our founding associate schools being Kellogg and Wharton, and then our associate schools, London Business School, Sloan School at MIT, and Fletcher School. So these are some of the big names in management education. And since its inception, ISB has been working at very close levels of collaboration with all of these top schools around the world. So we run plenty of exchange programs with faculty, lots of student exchange programs. We have 40 plus, 43, I believe, to be specific, apart from these programs. And we also do a lot of research collaboration with these universities. So if you were to pick up a top leading management journal or marketing journal, you'd see research published with professors in collaboration with these universities. So that is some of the aspects in terms of what ISB stands for and what ISB aims to be in on the global scale. So the agenda for the day, I want to talk a little bit about our evaluation, the methodology, and what we look for in an applicant's application. Then I want to talk about essays, LORs, test scores, GMAT, GRE, and finally, like we always do in all our sessions, open up the chunk of the time for interaction and have your questions answered. So I'd like to start out with an example. And if you were to see the slide, we have two candidates, candidate A and candidate B, with three parameters: academics, work experience, and test scores. And at the outset of it, I want all of you guys to think as an adcom for a business a college would. Think you are selecting a candidate for an MBA program. So for the next few seconds, put yourself in that seat and look at the parameters for candidate A and candidate B. So we have academics 75% for A, 92 for B, work experience 3 for A and 4.5 for B, and test score 690 for A and 750 for B, and a commensurate GRE also. So for the next few seconds, think like an ADCOM member and tell me which candidate you would select. Would it be candidate A or candidate B? Right, we're getting an overwhelming majority for candidate B. We have one inconclusive, okay, depends on the exposure, yes. But just, at the outset, if you were to look at in terms of like the information I gave you, hands down, it would be candidate B, right? And, that is not a hard choice to make. Obviously, it'd be candidate B. But speaking from the ADCOM's perspective, we've been analyzing applications for over 20 years now. And you would be shocked to know that it is not very often that we are faced with such a dilemma, and sometimes we do end up picking candidate A over candidate B. And let me talk about the instances where that happens. If you were to see all of these parameters, candidate B is hands down superior to candidate A. But we also want to know how invested this candidate is in ISB. How much does he know about ISB? Um, and has he done his homework before filling out the application packet and submitting it to ISB? And what are the avenues through which we know these is the things that are not displayed on here, your essays, your how elaborate you explain your work experience. For instance, we have five portions where you talk about your work experience, and we've witnessed people who haven't elaborated. They usually have a one word answer, and that is not a great signal for us. When we read an application, we want to know that this applicant really knows about ISB and he has done his homework. For instance, let me give you one more example. We have candidates who write a generic essay. Maybe they're applying to another MBA program and use the same essay to answer the ISB application essay. So that is a huge red flag for us. So when we ask you a question on the essay, we expect it to be tailored to ISB. So that could be through you know kind of conveying that you know a little bit about ISB, you know a little bit about what goes on at ISB, and there's multiple avenues which you can kind of bring that out through your application packet. And I will talk about this more elaborately as we go along. But for those of you who fall in either the candidate A bracket or candidate B bracket, I think this is very important, and it's a huge, I would say, thing to keep in mind. So, regardless of if you fall into either of these buckets, this is something that you can always refer back to, and kind of invest in knowing about the school and the program before you do apply for it, and obviously spending considerable amount of time on your application also. So now, how do you get your application to reflect that you're a truly invested candidate, and you should ISB should pick you, that you're a good candidate? How do you get your application to reflect that? Namely, these three questions. You have to have at least in your mind an answer for these three questions. Firstly, why do you want to do an MBA? And this is a very generic question that, regardless of whichever program that you apply to, they want to know why you want to do an MBA. Secondly, why ISB? And finally, why do you want to do it now? So this is the great equalizer, right? So why MBA? Why ISB? Why do you want to do it now? So before you start your application, or even if you started your application, this is something to ponder about. Even if it's not elaborate, write 1 or 2 lines about each of these things on a piece of paper, and that will be kind of your guiding light. It'll give you some sense of direction for your application. And this is something that we strongly recommend that all of the candidates do before they submit their application. I want to talk a little bit about the class of 2020, give you an overview of the, what kind of parameters or the class profile looks like. So we have 5 different parameters here. As most of you already might be aware, we have 2 campuses, Hyderabad and Mohali. So we follow a one school, 2 campus philosophy, which is to say everything is the same except for the geographic location and the size of the class. So the average or the numbers here reflect exactly that. So the blue numbers are for the Hyderabad campus and the green for the Mohali campus. So if you were to compare, they're exactly identical or very, very similar. For instance, gender diversity is 62% male, 38% female at Hyderabad, while 61 at Mohali, 61 to 39. Similarly, the average GMAT scores are exactly same, 710 for both. The average GRE scores 325, 327. Average work experience exactly the same, 4.3. So this is just to kind of give you a glimpse of our class and how the breakup is between both of the campuses. All of these statistics are available to you on the website also if you do require those for future reference. So if you've been following us on any of our social media or even our newsletter, you probably already know how important or how embracing ISB is towards diversity. So not just cultural diversity, but also professional and experiential diversity. So some of the different backgrounds that we have people from are, obviously we have the engineers, we have chartered accountants, we have the lawyers, We also have a lot of doctors, army officers with, a lot of army officers with 20 plus years of work experience. We have people from humanities, we have artists, we have public speakers, we have international athletes, and so on. Um, so if anybody is not able to hear me, please log out and log back in. That should usually fix the problem. But again, this is a glimpse of what the diversity at ISB will look like. And a really good practice I suggest is you should reach out to one of our current class members or alumni and ask them about their experience and their experience with their peers at ISB. Most of our alums love talking about their batchmates and their peers, so that will be a good way for you to kind of get an insight into what happens at ISB and what kind of people you will be meeting on campus also. So talking specifically about admissions, we have three different modes of entry, and the first and foremost, the conventional mode of entry is with having at least 2 years of work experience. So that is a direct admission to the PGP if you are shortlisted. And then the early entry option, which is a deferred admission program. So this is for people with less than 2 years of work experience. So say you have 1.5 years of work experience. And if you are shortlisted, you will be given an admission to the PGP class contingent upon you completing 2 years of work experience. So you will not be able to join the coming year, but you'll be joining the following year. And finally, the Young Leaders Program, which is for people in the pre-final or final year of their college, be it undergraduate or master's, but not having worked after your undergraduate. If you are applying in your master's program, you should have not worked after your undergraduate. So it doesn't apply for people with full-time work experience. And again, this is also a deferred admission program contingent upon the candidate finishing his graduation and having 20 months of work experience. At a very broad level, the qualities that we seek in the candidates are first and foremost academic credentials. If you have strong academic credentials, that would definitely be a huge advantage. But even if not, I'll talk about some of the other ways on how you can strengthen your application. Leadership quotient, and this again doesn't is not confined to your professional leadership traits, but also your personal leadership traits, and finally your personal attributes. And in personal attributes, we just want to get to know you as a person. How are you outside of your professional setting? How are you? What do you spend most of your time doing? Are you involved in any any form of social service? Are you involved? What are your hobbies? What are your extracurricular activities? So these are some things that we like to get to know about the candidates also. Okay, diving further into the evaluation process, I'm going to talk about 6 parameters. So if you want to make a note of these, please feel free to. The different parameters that we evaluate an application are academics, work experience, awards and activities, your LOR or a letter of recommendation, your GMAT or GRE, and finally your essays. So just to recap, if you've missed the previous slide, these are the first 3, and then these 3. So a total of 6 parameters on which an applicant's application is evaluated. So each of these different parameters has a certain weightage. And at a very broad level, so suppose you're just average or slightly below average. It's fine. You might have a lower weightage on that. But how do you increase the overall score of your application? You increase the weightage on one of these other 5 parameters. So that will balance. And if you have like an over and above average on one of these parameters, that will make you even more stronger in terms of your overall weight for your application. So that is the kind of mindset you should bring when you fill out your application. So let's talk about academics. So when I say academics, it comprises of your 10th, 12th, your undergraduate, and your postgraduate if you've done a postgraduate program. So what is something about this? This is something that's all in the past. We cannot change it, right? And that is absolutely fine. At ISB, we admit close to 900 students every year, and trust me, not all 900 students have stellar academic profiles. So Like I said before, when you are filling out your application, if you feel that your academic profile is not strong, you can't change it. It's done in the past. So don't worry about it. Don't fret. What you have to do is work on your other five parameters and give them due attention to kind of make up for the lower weightage in one section. So let me talk a little bit about the technicalities also for those who have already started filling out the application. In the drag down box, if you do not see the name of your college, please do write to ISB. Our email address is pgp@isb.edu, and we will fix that almost immediately. And for those of you who have a gap year in education or in your work experience, that's absolutely fine also. We have a separate section wherein we ask you to explain uh, why you've had that gap. So we are not here to judge anybody. All we want to know is what was the reason. And if you have a justified reason, we are absolutely fine with it. It will not be held against you. One more condition is that you can only pursue one full-time program at a time. So imagine you have already been admitted into the PGP program, and you also have an admission for another program. You can only pick one of the other programs. You cannot pursue both of them parallelly. And finally, if you've done any kind of certificate courses or online courses, or if you've done um, if you pursued any academic content or material, and it does not have a CGPA, please do mention that in the additional education section. So this comes under the academics tab, and all of these certificates, the online courses, you can mention in this additional education tab of that portal, of that segment. So the bottom line is, don't fret if you have low academic scores. All of the 900 students at ISB do not have great academic scores. The only thing is that they have to be counterbalanced. Work experience. So first and foremost, we really want to get to know you in a professional setting. So what is it that you exactly do? So there are 5 boxes that ask you to elaborate on your job responsibilities. And please do pay due attention to this, because a lot of time we see candidates just having one word answers. It doesn't matter if you don't fill out all of the 5 boxes, but whatever you do fill out, please do mention it in a comprehensive manner. Because let me give you a kind of, I would say, peek into how the admission process works. It's a 3-stage process, wherein in the first stage, we get people from a similar industry or a similar role to kind of review your profiles and kind of proofread them. Say, okay, this job function, are these job responsibilities, are these aligned with this job function, to kind of just proofread. And we really want to get to know you in a very professional setting. So that is the whole idea behind this. So please do not discount the importance of this section. Um, your job responsibilities, obviously, being one of the major areas for your work experience, it needs to be filled out comprehensively. Secondly, initiatives and achievements. So you might have done, you might have engaged in activities wherein you've initiated a process change, or you achieved something at your work setting, or even something as simple as organizing a volunteer session for some NGO or some social cause. All of those count. So if you do have any of those, please do mention that in the initiatives and achievements section also. For those of you who are worrying about us contacting your reporting manager or HR manager, don't worry. We will not be contacting them until you are enrolled in classes at ISB. Next up, be honest. So this is something that is not specific to work experience. It is something that is applicable to your entire application. Please be honest and be genuine in what you're saying, be it your essays, be it your work experience. So over the course of time, listening to a lot of alums, what I've picked up personally, and what you might have already heard one of our alums saying, is that if a person is not genuine, we can easily pick that out. So please do keep that in mind. If you've done something but you haven't done that to the extent that you've talked about in your essays, I would again give you a word of caution. It's fine if you're able to pull it off, but if you're not able to pull it off, then please be genuine, because That would be a huge red flag if the adcom's like, okay, this person doesn't really know so much about this or as much about it as he or she has claimed. Um, Finally, we're looking at qualitative aspects rather than your CTC. So what you do is more important than your CTC and your organization stature. So a lot of people wonder if they're coming from a startup, is it a disadvantage? Or if they're coming from an MNC, say Google or Facebook, is it an advantage? Actually, not at all. It doesn't matter what your company is. What we want to know is what you do at that company, what kind of functions you execute. So your company's name or where it ranks in the Fortune 500, that is not a big deal, as is the qualitative nature of what you do there. Letter of recommendation. Again, before I get started with this, let me kind of discern a huge misconception that people have. So people usually believe the higher the designation of the person recommending you, the more weightage it has, but that is not at all true. The ideal recommender would be your direct reporting manager. And the reason I say this is because this is a person that meets you every day, and this is a person that can kind of vouch for you in a professional setting. You know what you are as an employee or what you are as a team member. So that is what we're trying to look at. We're trying to get insights into you in a professional setting. Uh, and we understand that you might not always have a great rapport with your reporting manager, which is absolutely okay. That is not looked at as a bad thing or given a negative remark. So the alternatives that you have if you don't want your direct reporting manager to be your recommender is you can go to your previous manager, a senior colleague, or a client from your current or previous organization. For people with their own companies or family businesses, you can get a LOR from your client, business partner, supplier, auditor, or a banker also. And finally, like I said, just to reiterate, go by the quality. We go by the quality of the evaluation rather than the seniority of the designation. So again, if your CEO is your reporting manager, it's absolutely fine to get an LOR from your CEO. But just because you know the CEO, it wouldn't really add a lot of weightage. Test scores. So we have the entire spectrum from 600 to 770 for GMAT, 311, 334 for GRE. So what this reflects is that, if you come and if you sit in a typical PGP class, you'll have people with 600 GMAT scores to 770 GMAT scores. So again, what I want to emphasize here is if you feel like you lack in one of the other parameters, really strive and get a score to the best of your capability. And I say this because this is something that is in your control, and it's considered as a really good thing in your application also, because it shows that yes, this person is willing to put in the effort. He has taken out the time to prepare for this exam and given it his best shot. So it's a great indicator of your capabilities. So if you're able to get a good test score, that's amazing. If you're lacking in one of the other parameters, please to compensate it. Your test scores are a really good way of doing that. And similarly, if you fall in the average or below average spectrum of your test scores, also you don't have to worry because ISB will not straight out reject. We don't have any cutoff system, so you don't have to fear that. But the one thing that I would say is going back to the initial slide. Don't forget to counterbalance. Counterbalancing, as in making up for this in one of the other parameters. Essays. So a lot of people tend to undermine the importance of essays. But let me just give you the view from the admission standpoint. It is the one way for us to get to know you as a person and your plans, be it short term, long term, to really get to know you as to get an insight into the way you think and the way you express yourself. So essays are a very integral part of your application. So some general tips I'd like to provide is reflect on your experiences and don't limit your reflection to professional experiences only. You can talk about your personal experiences also, and that is why if you've seen the questions for this year's essays, we have one personal question and one professional question. So we will not give you any constraints. There are no boundaries. You can feel free to express yourself in as many different angles or parameters that you would like to. let your thoughts flow. That's a given. It's a very ongoing process. It's not something that you just think about and write an essay. You might have few initial thoughts and you might build up on it. You might, reiterate. You might go back and want to change a few things. So it's an ongoing process. Let your thoughts flow and keep revisiting. Get it reviewed by your peers or somebody you have faith in, maybe a manager, maybe an ISB alum, because a lot of our alums would be reading your essays at the end of the day. They would be the ones interviewing you. So those are good sources. Language and tone. So we're not sticklers for fancy vocabulary and glittery English. What we're looking for is that we want to understand what you're trying to say. So basically, a good way to check is uh, write your essay and give it to somebody who doesn't know what you're trying to do with that essay. If they're able to understand what you are trying to convey, then you should be good to go. You don't need to use fancy words and stuff. So just grammatically correct, do a spell check. If again, those are huge red flags. If incorrect grammar and spelling errors are red flags, so those are some things that I would be cautious about. But you don't have to use any fancy words. Mind the word limit. We do have word limits for both of the essays, so please do keep that in mind. And finally, like I mentioned, get your essays reviewed. You could review them yourself, and it's always a good practice for you to get it reviewed by a third person. Coming to the content part of the essays, first and foremost, what makes you unique? With this question, what I'm trying to say is, how are you different from everybody else in the applicant pool? How are you going to contribute to ISB's PGP class? When we are getting 900 people into the class, we expect each and every one of them to make a certain contribution to the class. It could be their professional expertise, it could be their personal perspectives, their life experiences, all of these things. That is why we have a personal essay and a professional essay. So what makes you unique can either be a personal aspect or a professional aspect. Co-creators, change agent. This is also an important aspect that you can talk about. Did you ever co-create something? It could be a committee at your work. Did you ever spearhead change in an organization? Did you change the process of your team or a process that your team followed for the last few years and you came and made it more efficient? These are some things that we would like to know about you. Like I mentioned, not necessary professional. How can you add diversity to the batch? Diversity, again, not being confined to professional. It could be personal, it could be social. All of these aspects also count. Is ISB the right fit for you? Very important. If you go back to the three questions that I had mentioned at the start, why MBA, why ISB, why now? This fits right there with that. Is ISB the right fit for you? Get to know a little bit about ISB as a school. Even though you might not talk about it in the initial application, it is something that our AdCom will try to know during the interview. So it's always a great practice to know if ISB is the right fit for you, regardless of the school. Actually, not just ISB, but any school that you apply to, is it the right fit for you? What happens at that school? What do the students or what do the alums of that school say about it? What are the placements like? What is the on-campus life like? All of these would fit into if a school is a right fit for you or not. Future goals, both short and long term, 150 words each. We don't expect you to have something extremely concrete. If you do have concrete, vision for yourself in the short and long term, that is splendid. But even if you do not, what we're trying to learn from you here is whether you have a sense of direction. You might be coming from a hardcore technical background, wanting to go into consulting. That's absolutely fine. We have a lot of people that come from a background like that. So just kind of having a broad vision or a general sense of direction, and it's not something that you have to stick to. It is something that's very dynamic, that keeps changing day to day with each interaction and with each class and each group project. All of those things keep changing. We would also like to know how ISB will help you achieve your goals, both short term and long term. So, a way, definitely talking to the alums and talking to the students is a great way to find that out. And I strongly recommend that. So show clarity of thought in that. And one way to help is by doing research. Research on ISB as much as possible. Try to figure out where ISB ties in with your short and long term goals. For instance, like I mentioned, consulting. We have a consulting club on campus. So talk a little bit about consulting club. Say, for instance, McKinsey comes on to campus to hire. So talk about, so McKinsey comes and interacts with the consulting club. They do a session with the consulting club, and I'm really interested in going into a consulting career. So those are the kind of lines you ought to think upon. So definitely doing your research about the school will help immensely. So this slide is in specific to reapplicants only. Uh, so some of the things that are mandatory for reapplicants is that you will have to write an additional essay, kind of showcasing your changes or growth that has happened from 1 year before. Again, we don't expect any radical changes to happen in the course of 1 year. Whatever changes that have occurred in your thinking, in your work experience, if you've changed a job, or even if you haven't changed a job, just your outlook. So those are the things we're trying to get at. And it is okay to use parts of your previous essay. You can use your previous essay. Just make sure the information on that essay is updated. So, for instance, if you've changed your role, or if you've gotten a promotion, or if you've changed your company, so please don't, forget to put those on. It'll be a red flag if you say you're working at XYZ company, but you've actually changed the company. So that is something you have to pay due attention to. Timelines in specific to this year for both PGP and the early entry option is 20th of September for round 1. We will be announcing the deadline for round 2 also shortly. So we will keep you in the loop, not to worry about that. Some of the touch points, we will try to answer maximum number of questions in the session itself today. But if we are not able to, these are the best ways to get a hold of us. You can email us at pgp@isb.edu, and you will definitely hear from us promptly. Again, we have a QR code on the side. For those of you who haven't logged in, please do log in. It will give you a better sense of what the application looks like and what we're expecting from you. With that being said, I am done with my formal presentation. We will be having we will be joined by our colleague from GMAT soon. But before then, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat box, and I will be taking your questions.
Okay, so yes, there's a question from Bhanuja Nithi. Is there an advantage in applying in round 1?
Yeah, great question, Banuja. Definitely. Let me talk about in terms of scholarships. So ISB has plenty of different scholarships. We have need-based scholarships and merit-based scholarships also. And we also have a couple of 100% scholarships, which is to say waiving off the full tuition fee waiver. And this is applicable only to people applying in round 1. Also, another advantage of applying in round 1 is, for instance, we were just take these numbers for representation purposes. If we were to give out 100 offers for the entire year, and we get really good applications in round 1, we might not we won't hold back from giving out admissions to good candidates just because we have a quota or something. If we get 55 good candidates in round 1, we will be giving out offers. Similarly, if we get 60 good candidates in round 1, we will be giving out 60 offers. So definitely applying in round 1 will give you certain advantages.
Okay. What exactly does activities mean in activities and awards?
So again, that's a great question. So with our definitions, we are pretty broad. When we say activities and awards, it is all comprehensive. It could include anything from the range of like you winning an art competition to you winning a national or an international event. So you don't have to confine activities to something substantial. It could be something from the local level to something at the national level or international level. So all activities are considered.
Okay, so Pujita is asking a question. Do you have a preference in GRE and GMAT?
Pujita, absolutely not. We do not have any preference for GMAT or GRE. As a matter of fact, we tell the applicants to take the exam which they are more comfortable with. We understand certain people are more comfortable with GMAT, whereas certain people with the GRE. So, try out both the exams, do a mock test for both of them, and figure out which one works better for you and take that exam. From the admission standpoint, we have no bias towards any of the exams.
Okay, so we'll take a few more questions before we have the GMAT session, and post which again we'll start with the quick Q&A session. So Sadvita is asking a question: will there be different key aspects seen in application for EEO applicants? Or what I'm assuming is asking what is the difference between a PGP application and an EEO application?
Got it. So with EEO applications, Sadhika, we understand that there are people with not people without extensive work experience. There could be people with 3 to 4 months of work experience also. So that is something we take into consideration. But overall, it is very similar. The different parameters that I mentioned, the 6 different parameters. So those are the overall parameters that you will be evaluated on. So certain people have reservations about them having only 4 months or 5 months of work experience. That's absolutely fine. For EEOs, we do cut them that slack. And also, if you want to get a letter of recommendation from your professor, if you only have very few months of work experience, that is also fine.
Okay, from Akshit Gupta, is there any other information related to round 2, like approximate date?
So, Akshay, until previously, we have been saying that there's a tentative date during the 3rd to 4th week of December. So, I would still say that remains the same, tentatively 3rd to 4th week of December. But as of now, there's no concrete information on that. Within the next couple of days, we will be coming out with a date for that as well.
Okay. Can you share previous year's GMAT range for EEO applicants and elaborate more on EEO option? On what parameters do you judge an EEO application?
So I had briefly answered this question, a similar question. So the parameters would remain the same for early entry option also. The 6 parameters being academics, your letter of recommendation, your essays, your awards and activities, your test scores, and your work experience. So those are the broad parameters that would work for early entry option also. And Amit, did you want to add something or?
So for EEO, we have the same parameters as what we look at for PGP. But obviously, in those parameters for EEO, some factors will be skewed towards them, and some factors will not be. For example, EOs may not have higher work experience, but definitely they would need to have a higher GMAT and GRE for then compared to people who have 6 or 7 years of work experience. But the parameters across both EO and PGP are same.
Thank you, Amit. So I've given Seher the presenter rights. So whenever you want Seher to take over, you can announce the same.
So we can now have the GMAT presentation. The GMAT team is with us. Seher, the marketing manager for South Asia at GMAT, is here to give us an insight into how to prepare for the GMAT test. And I'm sure you'll have questions for her also at the end of the presentation. So we'll continue this Q&A session after we are done with Seher's presentation. Seher, over to you.
Thank you so much, Amit and Yashwant. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Hi everyone, I'm Seher Khanna and I work with the GMAT GMAC Graduate Management Admission Council, and here I am actually to talk about the GMAT exam and the online GMAT exam and what the differences are and the similarities between the two formats, and clarify a few questions in case you have related to any format of the GMAT. Before I talk about the formats, I just like to let you all know that GMAT, talking about any format, be it online or at the test center, is one of the most widely used tests for MBA enrollments. 9 out of 10 admissions actually happen using a GMAT score, and 2,300 plus B schools accept GMAT. And it's not just for MBA, but for masters, STEM programs, MIM programs, all of that, use the GMAT. So there are 7,000 plus of these programs in 114 countries. Speaking about the structure of the test, this is for the test center. So pre-COVID times and post-COVID, the format of the test center GMAT hasn't changed at all. You still have the AWA section, IR, quant and verbal. You still have section order flexibility and those optional breaks that you used to have, the number of questions, everything remains the same. However, for the GMAT, this is something that we launched in the last week of April, and we had to make certain changes and because of some technical difficulties in making sure that you do experience the same GMAT, the same format. We do not have it as it is as we had the test center GMAT. Like there are some features, for example, the AWA section is not there in the online format of GMAT, and also you don't have the section order flexibility. But these are the things that we had to remove, or we could not include in the online format because of the way the product was designed. But to just let you know, overall, there has been no change as such in the section, in the type of questions or the section time, etc. So your preparation remains the same. And the credibility and the validity of the score is also the same. The validity is 5 years for both the formats, online or test center. And also, just to let you know, actually, before the launch of the online GMAT, we had this calls with all the member schools that we work with very closely across the world, and we made sure that schools understand what the online GMAT is, and all leading schools, and obviously including ISB, which is obviously a leading school not just in India but across the world, are also accepting the online GMAT. So just don't hesitate and don't follow if there's any myth that you have that schools will not consider the online GMAT at par, or the score maybe at the test center will be preferred. That's not true at all. Both the format of the tests are acceptable by schools. In any format that you write, it doesn't matter. Just choose the one that you're most comfortable with, going by the features, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, because we want you to understand the differences between both the tests, right, pretty well before you book whichever test you're most comfortable with. The structure of the online GMAT is this, where you do a check-in process, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Then you have quant, verbal, and then IR. And then moving on to the differences that I was talking about, where we've tried to list all the differences of the features that you have for the test center GMAT and the online GMAT. For example, for test center, your section order flexibility I just spoke about is there, whereas for online, it's quant, verbal, and then IR. So make sure you take all the practice exams also in this particular sequence in case you're planning to take the online GMAT. Also, I want to clarify a very important point here. There is no unofficial scorecard in the online GMAT. You cannot preview your score after the test. You will only get official scorecard, which will be emailed to you within a week. Whereas for a test center, you can preview your score after the test. You will get an unofficial scorecard, and you will get an official scorecard within 3 weeks. So this is a very major difference between the online and the test center. So make sure, in case you're planning to take the online GMAT, you do take it at least a week or 10 days before the school deadline. Whereas if you're planning to take the test center GMAT, you should definitely take it 3 weeks before the school deadline, right, to get your official scorecard. So that's really important, and that's why I highlighted this point here. The other bit is about slots. So you test centers are also almost all of them are open in India except for the ones which are in colleges, but most of them are open in Hyderabad. Do check mba.com/find a seat in case you want to check whether the test center near you is open or not. In case of online, it's very simple because you take the test at home. You can book a slot 24/7 in 15-minute intervals. Just to let you know, online GMAT is it's just a test that you take at home. All you need is your laptop and a whiteboard. And then you're good to go. I mean, you just need to connect the laptop to power supply all the time. Your video has to be on, and the proctor at the other end will be looking at your video feed, and just to make sure that there's no suspicious activity done during the test. But that's about it. And you can take it at your home. Just make sure it's a quiet room and nobody else is there apart from you while you're taking the test. So that's what the online format is. Actually, it's also $50 cheaper than the test center GMAT, and score sending in online GMAT is actually free to unlimited programs. I think that's a big advantage to all those people who want to send their scores to a lot of schools for a lot of programs. So score sending is absolutely free, whereas for test center GMAT, after 5 free scores, you need to pay $35 per program. So that's a big advantage that you might want to use in case you plan to take the online GMAT. Score sending option is actually there for the online GMAT only after you review your score, which is after you see your official score after a week of taking the test. So cancellation feature is not there here. In case you don't like your score that you see after a week of taking the test, you do not need to send it to any schools. In case you like your score, you can send it to school. So it's as simple as that. There's no cancellation feature. For test centers, cancellation feature becomes really important because there you actually do a pre-selection. Before you even take the test, you select the programs that you want to send your score to. So if you get the score which you were, kind of preempting, then you can obviously send, if you get that score which matches your expectation, you press submit, and all those programs who you have selected will get your official scorecard within 3 weeks. But for those of you who could not get your expected score for a test center, in that case, just cancel your score. So it's as simple as that. So cancellation feature is important in the test center. It's not really needed in the online GMAT. That's a question again that we get very often. That's why I spoke about this point. But other features are all available on mba.com. There is no one more point which I missed here is that there is no ESR for the online GMAT, and also there are no retakes for the online GMAT. You can only take it once. Test center, you have many takes available. You can take it 5 times in a year, 8 times in a lifetime. So, and you do have an ESR option like you had before for the test center GMAT. So that's about it. Another query that I again get very often from people, so I'll just clarify right here. In case you take the online GMAT and you now want to take the test center GMAT, you don't have to wait for any number of days. For example, you took the online GMAT today, you can take the GMAT at test center tomorrow also. You don't have to wait for any number of days before you book a test center GMAT. Whereas if you book a test center GMAT and you want to take another test at a test center itself, then you need to wait for 16 days. Again, important point, so I clarified. Speaking about the similarities, it's again, like I've mentioned, validity is 5 years. Also, accommodations are available in case of disability. There's absolutely same scoring methodology, same algorithm, same scoring scales, because of which obviously we have also studied data, and from data I can tell you that people who've taken both the test at the test center and at home, the online GMAT, their scores have been comparable. There's been absolutely no preference as such. It's not that one format works better than the other. It's a very subjective choice. So if you ask me which one should I give, it all depends on where you think you will be able to perform the best. If you think you can perform in a familiar environment like your home, and you do have these things sorted, your internet is sorted, you have an internet connection which is at least 1 Mbps, you do have a consistent power supply, you do have a quiet room, a laptop, and you could get a whiteboard for yourself, then I would say take it at home, because with your own system and a familiar environment, your stress levels would be less. However, if you don't have these features and you still think that taking the test at a test center, maybe it works better for you and your mindset for you to be able to perform, you can take it at the test center. It all depends on, it's a very subjective choice, so I wouldn't say one format is better than the other. These are some details about the check-in process. I'll put up a link where you can actually check all these details. It's all on mba.com, but the link will help you direct you the exact information page. So what you have to do is you just have to make sure that you've done a system test before taking the online GMAT or booking the online GMAT, and you also install OnView software on your system, which is the Pearson VUE software, which is required for you to take the test. And you also have to upload during the check-in for that 10-15 minutes time, you will upload photo IDs, your face photo, and also a scan of 360-degree view of the room. All of this will be required by your proctor. And once this is done, your test will begin. Speaking about the whiteboard, because this was spoken a lot about when we launched the online GMAT in April, people said, a lot of candidates and test preps also said that the online whiteboard is maybe not as friendly as a typical traditional physical whiteboard is. So now you do have an option of using a physical whiteboard, which means that it's a traditional whiteboard that you would have obviously seen in our classrooms. But you also have to make sure it follows the dimensions that are mentioned here, 12 inches into 20 inches. Just order it from Amazon or Flipkart or any of your toy stores if you have close by, and order obviously a marker and an eraser also. And make sure all of this is ready before you take the test. You should also obviously do all your practice on a whiteboard in case you plan to use that. No writing tablets or chalkboards, etc. are allowed. It's a whiteboard marker, and on a whiteboard, that's what is permitted. Some questions that we get very often, so I put it up here and I'll answer them before you even ask, just to save some time. In terms of test centers, please go on to that link that I spoke about, mba.com/find-a-seat, and you will be able to find whether your test center close to you is open or not, or is booking appointments or not. We are following all social distancing measures, so the capacity is definitely much lesser. So please book in advance in case you plan to take the test center GMAT. You have to wear a face mask at the test center. You will not be allowed to take the test in case you're not wearing a face mask. You also have to wear the mask throughout the test. That's a precaution that we're taking. It might sound inconvenient right now, but it's one of the precautions that we have to take because of the times that we're all living in. Also, don't worry because all the equipment will be sanitized before you take the test and even after you take the test. So all of those sanitizing measures are being taken by the staff at the test center. Appointments can be cancelled or rescheduled free of cost, but it cannot be transferred. That means if you booked an online GMAT, you need to cancel it. And if you want to take the test at the test center, you need to book a fresh appointment for that. You can't just say transfer my appointment from online to test center for the same day and same time. Transferring is not possible. You cancel it and then you book a fresh. And don't worry, you will not be charged for cancellation. Speaking about the workspace requirements, or no mobile hotspot is allowed, so that's important to note. Also, no phones, smartwatches, dual monitors, etc. are allowed. Make sure they're not around you. You're not using these devices. If your internet connection goes for just a few minutes, or your power supply goes for just a few minutes, very short duration, then don't worry, your test will resume from the same point where you left at. If it goes for a really long duration, then you might be facing some issue. There'll be some technical verification done for about 3 to 5 maybe business days. It will be needed at our back end to make sure to know that your case was genuine, and then a new appointment will have to be booked by you. you will not be charged in case there was a technical issue. Okay, speaking about this new initiative, not so relevant for people in Hyderabad, but in Delhi NCR, if someone is attending from Delhi, we're running this initiative where you can take the test from a WeWork center. It's a co-working space in case you're facing issues to take, and you're facing issues at home where you don't have internet connectivity or power supply, consistent power supply. So in those cases, you could take it from a WeWork center, but that's only for Delhi for now. About the preparation, you can actually book, you can order the official guide 2021. It's already launched at amazon.in. You can also use the Wiley link mentioned here. I'll put it up in the chat window also. So you could use that to prepare for the test. These are some important links that might be useful for some of you who might have more questions related to system requirements or even the online GMAT for that matter. So I'll put these links up in the chat window and then answer some questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, so audience, you can start typing your questions in the chat window or the Q&A section. I'll take the existing questions. Could you, Ravi Teja has a question. Could you repeat the 16 days between taking online test CTR part? I think this is for Seher.
Sure. I'll answer that. So basically, you do. What I was trying to say is that you don't have to wait for 16 days to take the test. In case you've taken the online GMAT, or and you want to take the test at the test center now, or vice versa, you don't have to wait for 16 days. You can take it the next day itself. There is another question on what is the clarification regarding whiteboard. All I'll say is that check the whiteboard specification. I'll put up a link here, Devbrata. I'll put up a link in the chat window in some time regarding whiteboards. So you can check all the necessary eligible specifications there before you order it. One question I see from...
Can I use a mouse? Okay,
Sure.
I'll just read it out for you, sir.
Okay.
Can I use mouse while taking the test on my laptop?
Yeah.
You can. We can use a mouse,
Yes,
right, while taking the test on
yes.
the laptop.
Yes, yes.
Okay. 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 Can I transfer my exam from test center to an online one?
No, unfortunately, you can't transfer. I clarified that. You have to book a fresh appointment. I got this one question privately. I'll just answer Navneet.
Yeah.
It says, are the scores for online GMAT and the test center GMAT kept separately? Well, I don't understand when you say kept separately, but the school, if you're asking, the school will know whether it was an online GMAT score or a test center. Yes, the school will know because the AWA section score will not be there. So the schools will definitely know that you've taken the online GMAT. Kept separately, your account, your MBA.com account will have these scores separately. So there's no averaging out or anything that happens, but everything is available on MBA.com, right? So you can check your My account in case you've taken both the tests. You will have the scorecard for both of them and the scores for both of them in your account there.
Okay, so there's a question from Sneha for Yashwant. Can we apply to ISB before receiving the GMAT official scorecard?
Yes, Neha, actually, you can apply with your unofficial score as well. And actually, what we've done is keeping in view the current uncertain situation right now. If you do feel like you might need a few more days to submit your GMAT or GRE score beyond the existing deadline of 20th of September, you can actually write to us at pgp@isb.edu and get an extension. So the requirement for the extension would be that you have to have a test date already booked and show us proof that you are taking the test in a certain time period. So if you feel like you're going to take the test or the test in the coming few weeks, please do write to us and we will look into giving you that extension.
So adding to that, we can give extension maximum up to 31st of October. So your test scores, whether GRE or GMAT, should reach us by 31st of October to be considered for round one. If they don't reach us by 31st of October, your application will be automatically shifted to round two. So you can go ahead and apply If you don't have a test score currently, you can enter a dummy test score in your application. But prior to this, you have to get a approval from us on a case by case basis. Only once you write to us and we approve, then you have this option of extending your date for submitting your GMAT or GRE test scores. Okay. Bhavik has a question. How many seats are there for EEO?
So, Bhavik, again, we do not have a certain quota system in place for any of the categories per se. For YLP, we do give out certain number of offers, but for EEO and PGP, we don't have a certain quota saying this is how many EEOs we'll take. When we do come across a good candidate, we do extend an offer to that person. And especially for an EEO, because it is a deferred admission program, we are a bit more lenient in giving out those offers to more number of people.
Okay. Thanks, Yash. Piyush has a question. Doesn't ISB accept the test center report? In that case, do we still need to take the test 3 weeks prior to the application deadline? So I have already partially answered this. Yash, can you also elaborate on this?
Sure. So, Piyush, if I understand your question correctly, you're saying if the test center already sent you a score, you do not have to take the exam in advance. Correct, Amit? Is that what he's trying to get at?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so it is not necessary, Piyush. You can get it directly reported from the test center, which I believe is sent to the school within 24 hours, I believe. Is that right, Seher?
Absolutely. So when you get your official scorecard, which is after a week of the online GMAT and after 3 weeks of the test center, but when you get your official scorecard, the school gets the online GMAT score within 24 hours. So as soon as you get your official scorecard, you just press send, the school will get it the very next day.
Yeah, thanks, Seher. So, Piyush, I guess that should answer your question. You do not have to take the exam 3 weeks in advance. You can submit it directly through the test center. And if you don't submit it through the test center, also, you can submit your unofficial score and share your official scorecard when you do get it.
Is wireless mouse acceptable, Seher?
I think for this, it's best to check the system requirements. I'll just post the link here and read through. I'm not very sure on this one.
So Gyani, your question is, can we write post October 15th and submit in round one? So Sugyani, you'll have to complete the application by September 20, the deadline for round one. In all respects, you have to get an approval from us prior to submit your application. So we'll need your date for writing the test, and we'll need to get your score by 31st of October. If you don't get it by 31st of October, we'll automatically transfer your application to round two. But you can go ahead and apply on before September 20 with all the components in place, minus the test scores, and then write a mail to us before applying, taking permission for extension, and we will allow that. So we have already answered, Zenia, your question. Not a question to panelists, but can you share the PPT regarding ISP admissions from a friend who couldn't attend the webinar? So, Sadvitra, it will be very difficult for us to share the PPT, but you're free to visit our website, you're free to visit our social media channels and our YouTube channels, and all this information is available there itself. And we'll also be organizing this particular session again on 13th of September, and you're free to attend that particular session along with your friend as well. So, Bhanuja's question is, are verbal and quant sessions independent? If we do good in quant, will we get tougher questions for verbal or is it independent? Sahir,
They're
would you take this?
independent. Yes, they're the two sections are independent.
So Akhil has a question. How instrumental will be the consistency element in our earlier job roles? Yes, would you want to throw some light on this?
Sure. So Akhil, definitely by consistency, if you mean by staying in a particular job for a prolonged period of time, so that is not per se a good or bad thing. We have a lot of people who have done multiple jobs, multiple different roles in different companies, and that is not looked at as in a bad light. It just depends on how you put forth your profile or how you wish to tell your story. For instance, we have a lot of people who are curious about different roles before they choose to narrow down on one and settle down in that one role. So it just depends on how you portray your profile. So if you switched 4 jobs in the last 2 years, but you talk about how you felt that you wanted to learn more about different functions before you narrowed down and settled in one function or one industry, that could be perfectly acceptable. So just being consistent in one. I'm hoping I got your definition of consistent in job correctly. So if that is what if what I'm thinking is right, it is absolutely fine if you've switched multiple jobs, and it's also fine if you've consistently been in one job and you think that is the job that you enjoy doing and that is where you see yourself 5-10 years down the line.
Thank you, Yash. So Devabrata has a question. I work in government defense PSU, and here officials don't have official email ID for security reason. Can I give her personal mail ID for LOR?
Yes, actually, we do have an option wherein you can opt for an offline letter of recommendation. That process is a little bit more elaborate than the online version, but so when you go onto your letter of recommendation section of the application portal, it will give you all of the instructions for the offline version as well. So just check that you want to submit an offline recommendation, and you should be fine, good to go.
So Ravi Teja is asking, what supporting documents or proof do I need to prove work experience?
So, Ravi Teja, if you're working for an MNC, I believe your pay slips would work as proof for the documents that you need to provide.
So Anubhav, will interviews be held online this year because of COVID-19 situation? So Anubhav, yes, the round one interviews at least will happen online this year because of the current situation, prevalent situation. By round two, we might look at having interviews in person if the situation improves. But we have acquired a customized digital platform which gives the best experience of an interview for both the interviewers and interviewees. So I think that you should not face any disadvantage in having an online interview this year. So Ayushi has a question on whether articleship is considered as work experience, or articleship for CA is considered work experience for ISB or not.
Ayushi, unfortunately, articleship isn't considered as work experience. So anything that you do apart from articleship, any full-time work experience would be counted, but articleship isn't counted.
So Sugyani has a unique question. Does ISB accept someone who is going through a divorce proceedings and have a wonderful career and a desirable experience? Would you want to attempt that, Yash?
Sure. So definitely we do, if that is something that has changed your perception or experiences about, things, you can definitely talk about that in your essay question. But, a personal aspect would not be counted for or against a person's candidacy. So that is absolutely fine. That is from my end. Amit, if you would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, so I think it's more about your professional career, your goals, your aspirations. That's what we'll be majorly looking at, and your personal life should not have much impact, as long as it doesn't come in the way of your professional aspirations. It will. I don't think it will be considered as part of the application, as part of the selection process at ISB, in my opinion. So Ravali has a question. If I take the exam on September 27th, can I still apply in R1?
Yes, Ravali, you can. So, like Amit had mentioned before, you have to write to us and take a permission for an extension. So, once you're granted that extension, so obviously you will have to submit your test date that you've booked in advance, and we will grant you the extension. And then, yeah, you can take the exam on 26th and submit the scores after that.
What about scholarships for EEO candidates applying in round two? This is from Gautam.
Hi, Gautam. So yeah, EEO candidates applying in round two are also eligible for scholarships. The only difference is you will not be eligible for 100% scholarship, and that is exclusively for people applying in round one. So you will still have access to the 75%, the 50%. So yeah, it is fair game applying in round two also if you want to be considered for scholarship.
Satyajit has a question. Does ISB have provisions to assist candidates with the essays?
With the what, Amit? I lost you.
Essays, the essays section of the application.
Okay, so Satyajit, the inputs that I provided were from the insights that we gathered throughout the last few years, analyzing people's applications. So all of the best practices I shared in the session, but we cannot provide specific details because every candidate is very unique, and the way people write their essays are also very personal. So based on their experiences and based on their career goals and stuff, so it is really hard to say this is what a perfect essay would be like. And to be honest, we get essays, very, very different. So it's hard to put a finger on an essay and say this is how you write a good essay. So the advice I would give to you is, don't limit yourself to any one certain set of experiences. Think about all the things that you've done that were impactful, that have impacted you. Learn a little bit about our school, see how our school fits into your vision, and keeping all of these things into mind, I would suggest you write an essay. And obviously, do a spell check, do a grammar check. Those are the basic. We do not expect any fancy vocabulary or extremely poetry English. So you should be good to go. Just a simple test would be, if you were to give that essay to a layman, would he understand what you are trying to convey through the 400 or 300 words that you've written? If he is able to understand what you're trying to convey, then you should be good to go.
Thank you, Yash. Shrikant wants to know about round two deadlines. So Shrikant, round two deadline this year should be somewhere around last week of December to first week of January. We'll come up with the dates shortly. You'll get to know about the round two deadlines of ISB within a week. So Navya, we are not recording this session, so we'll not be able to share the recording of this session. But you're free to attend our other sessions, which will similar sessions, which will be happening on 13th and 14th of September. We'll send out an invite to all the candidates, and you can also go to our website and register for those events starting from the coming Monday. So you can go to the webinar section of our website and register for those webinars. We'll have these sessions again on 13th and 14th of September. So Zubair Basha has a question. What is the reason for omitting the AWS section in online GMAT exam? Will it not affect my chances of admission? So Sahir, could you throw some light on this?
Like I said, actually, it was just one of the technical reasons we could not have that. It was mostly a product design when they were, when the product team in the US was working on the online GMAT features. this was something that we couldn't add in the test. As far as the school, no, it does not at all reduce your chances at any school for that matter. ISB, I'm sure Amit and Yashwant can clarify that ISB is also accepting the online GMAT and placing it at par with the test center GMAT, and so are all the other leading schools.
Yeah, Zubair. So, like Seher had mentioned, we have scaled both the exams to reflect an exactly similar score, so you do not have to worry about not having the AWA. Yeah, rather it's an advantage that you get to skip one of the sections.
So, Xenia, interviews for round one at least will be happening online, and we'll try to move to in-person on-campus interviews as and when the situation improves. So, Sakshi, question is, what is the fee structure of this course, and what is the duration of of the PGP program? Yes, you want to take that?
Sure. So, Sakshi, the duration is 52 weeks. Previously, it was 49, but we've bumped it up starting from this year's batch to 52 weeks. And the cost of the program, I believe, is somewhere close to 36, 37 lakhs. So, plus or minus a little bit here and there. The cost is available on the website also, but it should be around that range.
And that includes your accommodation, your tuition fee, and your all the deposits and other fees. So that's the cost of the program. Yeah. Yes. So Shrikant has a question. Do we have any session on GRE in today's webinar? So Shrikant, will be arranging a session on GRE sometime soon, and we'll keep you posted. We'll let you know when we do that. You are free to attend that session as well. We'll do that maybe in a week, 10 days time. So Debabrata has a question regarding mouse. It's not mentioned in the specifications which were shared by you, Sahir. Can you give any contact number for queries regarding GMAT? I'm trying Delhi contact number mentioned in GMAT site, but it's not working.
I'll just put up, it's basically contact us, and when you go there, there's an email ID and a number mentioned. If you write to the email ID, you should get a response soon, but I'll put these details up in the chat window in some time.
Sure. Thanks. What supporting document is needed to prove work experience? I have 1.5 years at current employer, but have 3 years at previous employer for which I don't have pay stubs as I was outside India. Yes, would you want to take that?
Sure. If you have your joining letter and your relieving letter, I think that would help. But since this is a very specific question, why don't you write to us at pgp@isb.edu and we can help you on a more personal basis. Amit, should that suffice though, like a joining letter and a relieving letter?
Yeah, that should suffice. Maybe, yes, that should suffice. And as a special case, you can also write to us and we'll respond to a query. But any documentation trail which proves that you have worked for 3 years, that should work in that case. So if you're abroad, there will be a lot of other documentation which you would have done, which you would have had, maybe in terms of your social security numbers and all the things. So all those documentations can work. But you can also write to us specifically with writing your case, and we'll help you on a personal basis. Could you comment on the impact on availability of seats for class of 2022 on account of deferrals from class of 21?
Yeah, great question. Actually, we get this question quite often, and so if you've been following us, we do have a lot of deferrals that happen every year. So, for instance, we've had deferrals last year, and we've had deferrals this year, and I'm sure we'll have deferrals next year also. And we've had a little bit more this year, but not a significant number. So I would say if you're a good candidate, ISB will definitely extend an offer to you. So that small number is not something you should really bother about.
So Tivabrata has a follow-up question on the offline recommendation. So he's asking whether offline recommendation means on paper. Yes, Tivabrata, it means on paper. You have to get the recommendation on the letterhead of the concerned person and send it to us as a scanned copy. Does the academics with average scores considered? If yes, how much the GMAT score should be? This is asked by Nitin.
Nitin, so you have average scores. What should your GMAT be? Is that the question, Amit?
Yes.
Okay. So we have an average GMAT score also every year, and if you think your academic scores are average, so one of the other five parameters you have to try and make them above average. If you're talking specifically about GMAT, the class average is usually 700 or 710 depending on the applicant pool for that year. So that is what you should aim for, and definitely I would not put a cap on your test score, because obviously the higher the better. So if you can get a 750, that's golden. So definitely don't try to aim for a certain score. Try and give it to your best of the abilities that you can. And in case you don't get a score that you're happy with, also try to focus on one of the other parameters, be it your essays or your awards and achievements, be it your work experience. So give it due attention, get it reviewed by your seniors, or get it reviewed by an alum. If you have access, you can reach out to them via LinkedIn. So all of these are different things that can go into your application. And just to kind of give you a concrete example of how things work from the admissions end, we've actually rejected a couple of people with a 750 and 750 plus in the last admission cycle, and we've given out offers to people with 620s and 630s also. So and your GMAT score or your academic will not be the deciding factor. Definitely they will be a substantial factor, but they are not the sole deciding factors. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. So Ravali's question is: will next year be online or offline classes?
So Ravali, actually, as a matter of fact, this year itself, we're starting all the preparations to bring people onto campus. We're in close contact with both the state and the central government, and we're taking, keeping them in the loop and trying to adhere to all of their rules and regulations. But ISB being a very closed community, so we stand at an advantage to kind of make the entry and exit points more, I would say, less porous than a regular campus would be. So we are doing all the checks that we can from our end. We're trying to bring people onto campus as soon as possible. So we were actually supposed to bring people in a couple of days before only, but since the situation hasn't improved, we still have that on pause. But we anticipate that we will be bringing people in pretty soon. Obviously, the situation being stable.
So in this COVID situation, is it mandatory for everyone to stay on campus once they get selected? If by the time the situation is not yet settled, something similar, Yash, would you want to answer that?
Yeah. So as of now, we haven't imposed anything as such. Definitely, we are monitoring the situation very closely, and we would not want to jeopardize anyone's health. So we will keep you posted on that. But ISB, being a very closed community, we have all of the heat scanners, and the campus is being sanitized on a very frequent basis. We only have very, very essential staff on campus right now. But I can say one thing for sure: once the campus does open up, we will be taking all the necessary measures to ensure the safety of the people. But as of now, we haven't imposed anything that people have to stay on campus or they don't have to stay on campus. So we will be informing you as things progress.
Okay. Debabrata has a question. Is PGP certificate considered for PhD programs in India?
Um, Amit, do you want to take
Yeah.
that?
S- So as of now, the PGP at ISB has been accredited by all the three accreditation agencies, and we now have the Triple Crown accreditation for our PGP program at ISB. And our LMs are now spread across all the 60 plus countries, working in different organizations, working in different. So they have not had any such issues with majority of the universities, with majority of the countries. There might be a couple of some issues with one or two universities or colleges in India, but that's something which can be which you can write to us, and we can try to convince the those particular organizations or universities. But majority of the universities now consider the PGP certificate across the world for either for employment or higher studies. Will LORs be considered from managers? Because I'll complete my 2 years by 2021 May. In case we ask for an LOR now, they might not accept to provide it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Amit. Could you please repeat that?
So will LORs be considered from managers?
Uh-huh.
Because I'll complete my 2 years by 2021 May. In case we ask for an LOR now, they might not accept to provide it.
Okay, you need to have at least 2 years of work experience by 31st of March if you want to apply for PGP. So I believe you're applying for early entry option. Um, so generally, what we tell you is definitely discuss your plans with the manager who is giving out your letter of recommendation. Keep them in the loop. Tell them that you plan to pursue an MBA program, and if at all your manager declines or he doesn't want to give you an LOR, the alternatives that you have is you can get it from a senior colleague, you can get it from a client in your current or previous organization also.
Thanks, Yash. So by March 2021, I'll be having an experience of 1 year and 8 months. Will I be getting uh, an admission in 2021 or 2022? My name is Utkarsh. Okay, Utkarsh. So, Yash, can you take that?
Yeah, so the requirement is that you will have to have 2 years of work experience by the 31st of March. So if you do not have, even if it's short only by a month, you will be considered as an early entry option. And if you are granted an admission, it will be for the following year.
Sure. Is reapplicant means somebody who is rejected in round one and applying in round two, or is it about last year and this year admission cycle?
Reapplicant is a person who has applied in the previous year cycle. So if you applied in 2019 and you're applying again in 2020, you will be considered a reapplicant. And also, just to mention, since you brought it up, you cannot apply in both round one as well as round two. You can only apply in one of the rounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rahul has asked a question: is it mandatory to do a job after getting an admit card? So I'm assuming he's talking about early entry option,
Mhm.
and that he's saying whether you can is you still need to work if you get a default admission.
Yes, Rahul, absolutely. We do expect that you will be working. So yeah, we don't. We you are absolutely allowed to work even after you're granted a deferred admission.
Will there be any one-to-one mentorship assistance for the application procedure? Vijay is wants to know.
Uh, we do not have any one-to-one per se, but we do have a lot of people that write to us and we reach out to them over the phone and talk to them if they do need any assistance. So we don't have a mentorship, but we do provide personal assistance if it is required. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, I would say I would recommend that you write to pgp@isp.edu. I can also put that email address in the chat so you have it for further reference.
Thanks. Yes. Also, one thing I would like to add here is you could also reach out to people on ISB community on LinkedIn and try to connect with them. So we have a very vibrant ILM community who are always ready to help aspirants. So you can reach out to them through a network on LinkedIn. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we will be glad to interact with you as far as the time permits, and see if we can help you in any way in writing your application. So look at LMs in your city or LMs in your organizations and reach out to them for mentorship, and I'm sure they'll be helping you as well. I have worked in the same company and similar role for 7 years, and I wish to get into a completely different industry, such as consulting. Am I expected to have anything else in my profile apart from my few transferable skills?
Uh, Not at all, actually. If you attended one of our orientation sessions, we have a couple of slides that talk about how many people make a career transition. So I'll just try to tell you from the session the information that we give out. Um, Close to 66% of the class makes a both function as well as an industry shift, which is to say, for instance, you're working in the software industry as a tester, and then you want to go into finance consulting. So that's a shift in the industry and shift in the function also. So 66% of the class was able to do that. As a matter of fact, one of the major reasons that people want to do an MBA is for that shift, and ISB has been a great facilitator of that shift in the past few years. So, since you have that question, I strongly recommend that you go onto our website and look at our career placement reports from the last 4 or 5 years. We have the entire list of companies, the number of job offers to the number of students, and all of those statistics. So that should really give you some confidence on how what the shift for you to a consulting role will be facilitated at ICE. And also, like Amit had mentioned, you can reach out to our alum community on LinkedIn. A lot of our alums are into consulting. So if you talk to them, they can also give you insights and they can tell you how they came from a different industry and were able to make it into consulting.
Also, adding to that, we'll be organizing a session on 6th of September at 11:30 a.m. With the director of placements at ISB. So he is a veteran of the industry, and he interacts with leaders of industry day in and day out. And you can all get all your questions on placements and industry transitions and so on get answered through him on 6th September at 11:30 a.m. We'll be sharing the links for this on our website shortly. How can I register for admissions and where? Hitesh has asked